Hello, viewers. If you are watching this video, thank you for watching. And my section was supposed to be the synchronous meaning, but it is my mistake to calculate the wrong dates in the United States and in Korea. Therefore, I will make up my presentation by recording. And thank you for this opportunity to allow me to kind of share my research in the Korea TESOL in 2022. Right, so my research topic is developing critical literacies through learning English as a second language. And I conducted a discourse analysis study. So in the future, if you have any questions after watching this video, please don't feel hesitate to reach me out in Texas A&M San Antonio. All right. So in my research presentation, I have two goals of this presentation. So the research method is focus on to study English learning discourses in Asia. So my research context is in Taiwan. So I want to examine the English learning discourse from a critical literacy perspective. So there are two goals of my presentation. The first one, when you implement an English education or bilingual education in Asia, what's the reflection of equity, injustice, and the human suffering in terms of an English or bilingual education implementation? So I want to look at how do we make the English education more equitable and make sure everyone have access in Asia. The second one, I focus on what are the parents' attitude toward English as a second, English as a medium or bilingual education in the research context, which is the country I'm from. So I think it's important to hear the different voices. So that's why I want to share my research in this conference this year. So my research context is in Taiwan. So in Taiwan, the government has launched the Bilingual 2030 policy precisely to boost the competitiveness of Taiwan's young generation, to enable the next generation to enjoy better jobs or salary opportunities. So building on our advantage of as a Mandarin speaking nation and on the top of professional knowledge. So the bilingual education policy is expected to further strengthen English communication skills of the citizens, especially among the young people, and help them to boost the global competitiveness. Namely, the bilingual education and the English education, they are really start to implement in the K-12 as the policy. So when I study my context, I also noticed that the government in South Korea, they also actively promoted English proficiency as an indispensable tool in exerting the competitiveness of individual and the country. So therefore, I think both countries really focus on the English education for the younger generation, and that they really see the value and even it's necessary to have the English language skill for different purpose to increase the competitiveness. So I say we have to develop critical literacies in English education. So the first question comes to me is, who should develop the critical literacy in English education? And then my answer would be all stakeholders, such as the policymakers. So right now, we already have the people, the government, the professor who join the committee to make the policy. But our educators, our students, and parents, they should have the critical literacies in English education as well, because they will be deeply affected when you implement the bilingual education. So what does it mean having a critical literacy skill. It does not subscribe to the notion of reading or writing skill as autonomous, technical, neutral, or universal. It is beyond you know how to read and write, but rather than regardless. Literacy as the process of becoming conscious of one's experience as historical constructed within specific power relations, which means when you implement the English education, we have to understand the history. We also need to understand how different voice construct within the society educational system to construct the bilingual and the English education. Critical literacies are potential tools for social transformation. So again, we all live in the society. We need to have the tool to see how our society transforms. But sometimes you need to have the tool to understand what happened, how it's happened, and what's the outcome. Such a social political perspective on literacy led to the critical literacy development, which has since become a major theoretical, ideological, and pedagogical construct. So we really cannot just say, yeah, just education, study at the school. It's nothing about the history, social, or government decision. No. Sometimes the one decision on the top, they're gonna have the impact on every single teacher, every kid, and even the learning outcome. So Paulo Freire, he really talked about the reading and writing skills are facilitated by an exploration of the cause and the effects of learners' life reality. So for example, if your country is going to implement the bilingual and English education, everyone will be affected. Therefore, we have to understand the reality when we implement the bilingual education. So when I collect the data, I borrow from the James Porges, the discourse analysis. So this data analysis helped me to develop the ways in which lost ideologies, identities, and the power in society and the school, and the ways in which language works to challenge those relations. So that's why I had to kind of look at the capital D. There are ways of behaving, interacting, valuing, thinking, believing, speaking, and often reading and writing that are accepted as instantiations of particular rules. So I had to really understand when bilingual education, English education are implemented, how it's gonna impact for those people who are struggling, or do they really share their voice about their suffering about the bilingual education. All right, so for this presentation, I do collect the data from the government report, which is the language policy, bilingual education policy white paper. But I also talk with two families about their perception, about their voice when implementing the bilingual education in their context. So I will focus on to talk about those two case studies. So I just want to talk briefly about what kind of two different family when I approach to collect some data about their perception, attitude toward the bilingual education. Especially they all have the school age students in their family. So the first family, Chen's family, they have 1 5th grade and the 3rd grade students in this family. And they do not choose the K-12 public school. Instead, they send the kids to attend the bilingual private elementary school. . However, because they kind of believe the bilingual education, English education, they have to invest on their kids. So they still understand the bilingual 2030 bilingual education policies, but they don't choose the K to 12 education because it seems that they know they want to have more education, more resource, or they even want to start earlier compared to the K to 12 in the public school. So the school is located in the second largest city. And it's kind of close to where they live. And then this family is also coming from the high socioeconomic class. You can tell the parents' occupation, the income level, and even the lifestyle. So that's the first family. The second family, Lee's family, they also have two kids in this family, fourth grader and the second graders. They attend the public school near where they live, and every week the school has a few hours of the bilingual and the ESL classes. So that's the opportunity they can receive the English learning in the public school. If you see with the geography where they live kind of suburban area of the fourth largest city in Taiwan. And mom and dad, if you try to kind of ask me which category, you can tell the mom and dad they have to work a little bit longer, and the job occupation belongs to the working class. All right. So when I do the interview virtually with the two families, I really look at when we talk about the bilingual education, about their English learning, about their kids, everything they can participate from the government report, the homework from the school, or even the social interaction between parents, I do find out a lot of discourse from the critical perspective. So they do talk about the injustice. They do talk about the power asymmetry. They also talk about the human suffering, and they also talk about the equity when they know, wow, my kid is going to have a bilingual education, and that's all the questions, the concerns, and the worries they have. So the first theme is about the injustice. They worry about the equal access. So for example, when I interview with the first family, which is the family who comes from the higher social economic, they do worry about the equal access, but it seems they understand they live in the larger city, the density, the population in the larger city, or even they can afford the private bilingual education school. So they don't worry about too much the distribution about the resource. But when I interview the second family, this family, they do talk about the teacher preparation because they don't live in the first large or second large city. So they do share with me which school can hire quickly. By saying that, which means if they had to kind of send the teachers, the ESO teacher, the bilingual teacher, or even the native speak English teacher, sometimes their kids, their school district, or even the location, they had to wait for a little bit longer compared to the other cities. The second one, even the teacher placement, even they are preparing a lot of Chinese speaking EFL teachers. However, the hiring is way much harder compared to the big city. So when they talk about the bilingual education and their kids, they already talk about the unequal access, about the teacher preparation and the teacher placement. The second one, power. The second one is the power asymmetry. So which means when they know they are going to have the bilingual education, or even they want to have more opportunity for their children, they do see the power asymmetry about the financial affordance. So for example, in the bilingual education, there are lots of discourse on the government report. They want to promote the bilingual use and the cultural exchange activities. So they want to provide a lot of opportunity for their kids. However, compared to the rich family, the kids from the higher social-economic social status, sometimes they just cannot afford either the English summer camp, send them to the English language schools for additional learning, or even study abroad or travel. So they already see the power is not equal financially. And the second one, when they talk about the bilingual education in the EFL context, they also talk about so how our Chinese teachers are teaching in English in the EFL classroom. So for example, they still believe that most teachers, they still dominate the conversation in the teaching in the classroom. So sometimes they kind of worry about, does it really change from the bottom so the teacher really can transform or even implement the bilingual education when they are going to teach in the content in English. The third thing, we really talk about their human suffering about the English education. The first one is many of the parents, they don't speak English, or they even don't have the chance to learn English when they were adult. They really cannot offer any assistance in the homework. So sometimes they just feel a little bit frustrated. It doesn't mean they don't want to participate, but they feel like their ability is a little bit limited, and then they feel frustrated because they could not support or find a resource because they don't know what's the resource from the community, such as the third bullet, cultural exchange, field trip, and the second one, even they want to support, but sometimes they talk about the after school cost. If I cannot help my kids' homework, I really want to send them to find someone who can help me about. However, financially, they still cannot afford the additional after-school cost to support the English learning. So they do really talk about the human suffering about this bilingual education and the English-only education. And then the last one, they talk about the curriculum. They are not educators, but they worry about what are they going to teach. Are they going to just take the material from the UK, from Canada, from the United States to implement the lesson plan to my students? Or how will they present my culture, my kids, my people, my society, my identity in the curriculum? Because they still want their kids to be part of their identity and who they are. So they don't want them to feel like, oh, you are learning English, so you are going to get rid of your first language learning, which is the Chinese. Or are they ready to learn the Chinese already? But again, if they are not ready to learn Chinese so well, are they able to move to English? So how do they keep the balance? So they do worry about the inclusive curriculum when their kids are going to be affected by the bilingual education and the English as a medium in the classroom. All right, so in this presentation, I do share the two different families' worries, concerns. And you do see the gap between the higher and the middle class or even the working class family. Every time when you have the policies, it's gonna have a different impact on some families. And some families, the children, of course, they will be benefit because they have more resource in the society. So we have to be careful for many things when we implement the new bilingual education or English education. So we have to have a clear objective to develop curriculum because again, this the things they study every day. We also need to help the parents to support their children and motivate them to develop the critical thinking in the classroom. Even kids that are in the classroom, they they can develop the critical thinking skills to challenge the books, to challenge the teachers, to challenge the learning process. So for example, we have to be careful about the English proficiency attainment. How much English you want to learn every year in the middle school, in the high school, and what kind of assessment you are going to implement to make sure I'm a successful second language learner. And we also need to be careful about the teacher preparation because right now there's a shortage of the EFL teachers, or even it's not easy to recruit the foreigners to be the teachers in the non-English speaking countries. And again, how do we make sure the equal distribution of the English curriculum, textbook, technology, all the resources? And the next thing we have to be careful is about the parental involvement in the English education. How do you involve all the parents, especially all the parents who may not have the English proficiency at the school? What kind of community support? Because you really cannot ask the parents to pay additionally to go to the cram school, learning school, or any kind of private tutor time. Sometimes it's just impossible. So if you are going to implement the education of English, how do you provide the support as well? All right, so go back to the few slides. I talk about who should develop the critical literacy. I say all the stakeholders, parents, educators, policymakers, the students. So if you are one of them, I think these are the skills and the questions you need to ask when you are going to be part of the English education. So the first one, what are we expected to do and why? I know policy says learning English gonna increase your global view, competitiveness. But why? You may think, I'm not going to travel. I'm not going to live in another country. I'm not going to do any business with anyone. Why should I learn English? Or what are the hidden agendas? Who receive the most benefit? And why are we studying this text or language now? The second bullet, how are students to be marked and assessed? You cannot implement a bilingual education English policy and the kids may not feel motivated and you give them, you label them. That's not the learning outcome we are looking for. The third one, what are the criteria for success? Are you going to add more burden on my learning? Are you going to give me more exam, the test, and try to tell me, oh, I'm good, I'm successful, or on the other way? The next one, what are the risks and the problems in the learning situation? Are you 100% confident that all the teachers are well qualified or they are totally well trained? If you recruit all the English speakers from all over the world, do you think that they are ready to talk about the cultural communication in the classroom with our kids? Right? The next one, these text forms refer to the various textual forms. Kids need to understand the everyday text, the literary, science, social study, all the different contents. So when they learn, when they read, we have to encourage kids to have a dialogue with the book, with the material they are working on. Next one. Whose voice do you notice most in the story? Whose voice is missing? So the same thing in the bilingual education, English education. Whose voice do you notice most in the story? Who always gets most benefit in this policy? Who have more access? When you give the homework by using the technology, or when you do any field trips in English or assign any project, who can complete the project so easily? How each group is represented in the classroom, in the project, or any books the teacher use. All right, so There is no perfect bilingual education, especially in the country who don't really, the country who doesn't really speak the language. So, few recommendations for pedagogical approach and material. When we learn a second language or implement the bilingual education, we always want to encourage to use the theme-based and the content-based in the EFL curriculum. We don't just teach the language without having learning any knowledge. That's not the future trend. The second one, we always want to include the culturally relevant text in the material in the project in the classroom if we really are going to move on the bilingual education in Asia. Cooperative learning is always have more benefit by doing the traditional learning or just kind of one-way learning. And the last bullet is called authenticity. Everything we do in the classroom, we want to make the real connection to the future life. So your book, your textbook, the project, the learning style, it has to be more authentic. When you try to promote the language education in the society, in the community, in the country, otherwise you're gonna see a huge gap if you don't link the authenticity between the classroom and the future use in the society. All right, so thank you, TESOL is here. And if you are watching my video asynchronously, you are more than welcome to reach me out if you are interested to talk about the bilingual and the ESL education in Asia. So sometimes we may not coming from the same country. However, we can talk about the similar patterns or kind of share the different thoughts, right? So thank you so much.